well, somebody asked me the other day, why did you want to do the whole thing yourself? And I thought it was probably sheer bloody mindedness, really. I think I'd always, as a musician, wanted to compose and write music and hear my drums in a certain kind of setting. Up until 1977, I'd been a team player in other people's bands, specifically targeting them, actually, to find out how they went about their music making. People like Pavlov's Dog and Gong and Roy Harper and Genesis and various other bands that I played in, to prepare for the idea of running my own band, Bruford. And slowly I began to write music, always pushed on, egged on by Robert Fripp and John Anderson and others who always encouraged me to write music. And eventually around 1977, after some time with Genesis and Phil Collins' band he was running on the side at the time called Brand X, I thought, the heck with this, no time like the present, bite the bullet, jump in, let's get started with a band. So I started looking around for people, and I'd just come from National Health, which was a very good British progressive rock group run by Dave Stewart, the keyboard player. And I went to Dave and said, look, Dave, I'm thinking of doing this. Could you help out? I'm definitely going to need some, harmonic advice, some talented writing ability. I have my own strong sense of what I want to hear, but realizing it all in all its harmonic glory was definitely going to be, I was going to need a bit of help on that. So Dave was the perfect man for that. I also wanted a stellar guitar player. I'd played with Steve Howe of Yes for quite a bit and Robert Fripp of King Crimson for a while. So that gives you some idea of the kind of people I'd hung about with, and I really liked their playing, and I wanted someone on a level with that. And I asked Alan Holdsworth, guitar player, who was relatively unknown in America at the time, but just around the time of UK, the band we were in together, he was beginning to break in America, and influence some of the great players like Eddie Van Halen and so forth. And Alan said yes. All we needed then was a bass player, and I knew the right man for the job, as it were, the great New Yorker called young guy. He'd only just come out of Berklee College of Music, I think, in about 1975. His name was Jeff Berlin, astonishing bass player. And at that point, American bass players were really some way ahead of our British root and fifth, bom, 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 bom kind of guys in England. And Jeff was really a jazz musician who knew what every note on the bass was for. So we had a band, started working, and it wasn't at that point a touring band in my mind. I didn't think there would be any way I could afford to run this as a touring organisation. So we went in the studio, cut an album called Feels Good to Me. That went remarkably well, and surprisingly I had a little detour then into this band UK, in which I spent most of 1978, I suspect, which then foundered upon the rocks. And both Alan Holdsworth and myself were ejected and came back to my own band, Bruford, where we formed a touring organisation. This was going to be the real thing. This was a band now that had real members and booked tours and went things, did proper things like proper groups do, not just a studio band. One of a Kind came out and astonished a lot of people. It was a very intense record. It sold very well and still does to this day. And it's very much features Alan Holdsworth as the, if you like, the star soloist. Mostly on my compositions, and when you hear it in the box set, you'll hear that Alan is used specifically and quite carefully to highlight the compositions, rather than which are very intricate, rather than just as a vehicle for his own incredible talents. We also used one or two other musicians, but broadly speaking, that's a quartet album of rock guys who I think were probably, you could say, buying into a jazz sensibility or buying into jazz, rather than jazz guys who, as it were selling out. There was a lot of talk of buying in and selling out in those days. So I think we were probably buying into the aesthetic of jazz, rather than selling out from jazz to rock. We were an instrumental rock group, for sure. After a while, Alan left and was replaced by John Clark, our second guitar player. And with John, we did another 2 years, I suppose, mostly in America, somewhat in Europe, but primarily we played in the States, which was enormously welcoming to the band. Still would be if the band was here now, and you have evidence of that on the Bruford tapes, where the audience is delirious, it seems to me. I can't quite understand why, but it's delirious. And then after a lot of touring in America, about 1980, we came back and made another album, Gradually Going Tornado, on which Jeff Berlin was the singer. It was not possible to carry Annette Peacock, our first singer, on the road because there wasn't enough repertoire for her to sing. She would have been performing 3 songs only. And but Jeff, being the bass player already, was fully engaged with that, so it was great of him to take on vocal duties. And we also, around that time, just before the end of the band, we played a live concert at the Venue in London, which constitutes the last of the full concerts in the box set. Around that time, we decided that, we had to split for financial differences. Usually musicians split for musical differences. Not at all. This was financial in the sense that the band was too expensive. My long-suffering wife could no longer eat. My children no longer had shoes. This is not strictly true. But it was an expensive operation, and I thought perhaps I should be careful and put it on hold for a while anyway, at which point King Crimson came into view again, and this would now be 1980. So it had been a longish 4 years, from Feels Good to Me, through One of a Kind, to Gradually Going Tornado, to Live at the Venue. But yet, the project had a feeling of incompletion about it, of something not being fulfilled, because Dave and I had gone into a rehearsal room to make new music for an album that was never recorded. And for a long time I've been looking at the tapes of that album thinking, this sounds awfully great. It's completely authentic. It's completely in the moment rehearsal room sketches of ideas that are incomplete, certainly. But if you put them out as 18 sketches on a CD, as is the case in this box set, it sounds remarkably close to being an album. So I'd had these tapes for a long time and thinking, how can I present these? And then somebody found for me this fabulous concert at the Venue in London. And with the mix of surround sound, remixes of the first 2 albums and the other mixes that are in the box set, you have enough material there for a really interesting and complete overview of an instrumental rock group of its time, from the minute it got together, through all the agonizing to get it to high status on the American stage, through to its kind of explosion and implosion and decay. And the entire shape of the band is there in the box set, from the Alpha to the Omega, from the very beginning to the very end. And for me, it's been a privilege doing it. What message would I have for a Bill Bruford who, in 1977, if I met a Bill Bruford on the street and he was just about to start this amazing band with Alan Holdsworth and Dave Stewart, Jeff Berlin and Annette Peacock, I'd probably say, don't even think about it.